Welcome to The Pitch. My name is Anthony Viscogliosi, and I'll be your moderator for tonight's program. As a reminder, this is a monthly program and is scheduled for the second Thursday of every month, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. At each program, two companies that are promising will be presenting their technology and business plan to our panel of experts. To begin, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Audrey Beckman as one of our panelists. Audrey is an independent business consultant today. She has a long history in the medical device industry. Her executive roles included 20 years in product development and 10 plus years in medical education and strategic initiatives for Zimmer and Zimmer Biomet. Next, let me introduce to you Michael Sherman. Michael brings more than 30 years of experience in medical devices and technology. Michael has more than 20 years in orthopedic product development and 9 years in venture capital. He started his career out very briefly at Synthase and then moved on early to Danek Medical, which later became Sophomore Danek, then Medtronic, Sophomore Danek, then Medtronic Spine. And at Medtronic Spine, he earned an important award, the award for being the largest patent holder in Medtronic Spine, more than 120 patents. Mike, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Next, we have Dr. Paul Anderson. Dr. Anderson is an internationally recognized expert in spinal trauma and complex cervical spine disorders. His research specialties include spinal fixation implants, the development of an artificial cervical disc, and continuous improvements of the standards and classifications, as well as measures in research and surgery. He is at University of Wisconsin, and he is past president of the Cervical Spine Research Society and past president of the Lumbar Spine Research Society. And he is currently co-chair of the ASTM standards board that relate to spine and orthopedics. For me, I have spent my entire career as an entrepreneur, executive, and financier focused in the neuromusculoskeletal industry. I've had the great pleasure to be working with my two brothers, John and Mark, during this time. In 1999, 23 years ago, we founded Viscogliosi Brothers, a single-family office. We operate that family office, and it is dedicated to founding, financing, and investing through the life cycle of neuromusculoskeletal businesses. These businesses have innovated more than 75 different products, distributed them in more than 70 different countries. They've been implanted in more than hundreds of thousands of patients, and they've been developed through 35 companies that we have founded. Of those 35, we've been successful in exiting 18 of them, generating more than 2.5 billion in exit proceeds to our lenders, our partners, and ourselves, resulting in a multiple on invested capital of 3.5 times. And we've specialized in carving out innovations that are undernourished in bigger organizations, need leadership, management, and focus. That's what we do at the family office. And I've served as chairman, executive chairman, CEO, president, managing director, and chief cook and bottle washer for many of our businesses, more than 20. Now, let me introduce to you what we think is one of the most exciting innovations leading healthcare today. That is the introduction of artificial intelligence combined with diagnostic tools such as CT image reading. Our next company has developed a non-invasive image biopsy analysis. Sounds very interesting. Let's learn more. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you our next company this evening, ImageBiopsy Lab. Their goal is to dramatically improve the ability of surgeons to diagnose and treat their patients using artificial intelligence.
In the world of ever-evolving technologies, medicine and our healthcare systems met the biggest crisis. Real changes should start in areas where the biggest impact can be achieved. And one of these areas is musculoskeletal imaging diagnostics. Currently, the existing approach to MSK disease diagnostics is purely reactive. We aim to change the status quo of MSK diagnostics to a proactive model by empowering physicians with a powerful software-assisted MSK platform to predict, assess, and track bone and joint diseases. Our one-stop shop of advanced image analysis modules is designed to cover the entire spectrum of bone and joints in the human body. Initially, we started with 2D X-rays and the most prevalent indications, and are now moving towards more advanced imaging modalities like CT and MR. Our deep tech algorithms turn raw imaging data into meaningful insights, providing the kind of structured information needed to change the way MSK diagnostics is being used. Medical images represent one of the largest categories of unstructured data used in healthcare. With the use of AI, we will structure it. We perform approximately 150 plus installations of our current platform across Europe and the US. In 5 years' time, we want to be able to pre-analyze every MSK-related image, providing image intelligence needed to go beyond imaging diagnostics. Our financial planning for the years to come takes into account our current and future revenues, as well as additional funding for the scale-up phase for leading investors in the field of medical technologies. We will require additional funding to finish developments related to product and cloud expansion, as well as launching our new solutions into the EU and US market.
Well, changing the status quo is a tall order, Richard. Presenting on behalf of ImageBiopsy is the CEO, Richard Uher. So Dr. Anderson, let's turn over to you for some questions and take your, you're on mute at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. I agree with your assessment that combining AI with electronic medical records and with medical imaging is a huge opportunity and a huge space. I'm just wondering, Richard, what is it that we're measuring here to aid clinicians in diagnosis and treatment of musculoskeletal conditions?
Right now, it's mostly structuring the data, structured input data. Think of long leg X-rays, for example, mechanical axis, anatomical axis. These kind of reads which are required before surgery and then after surgery. That's just one example, which we automate. Basically, it's a zero-click software running in the background, providing these information automatically to the surgeon, to kind of like guide them in their procedures.
There's always IT problems, challenges that need to be solved, which adds cost to everything. So how does this product work?
Well understood, and I think there's an excellent point you're making here. We have so far decided to go only on premise. So think of our software as a platform which listens on a DICOM node, DICOM port, basically all images coming in from your imaging department, your radiologists. Basically, we collecting these images, we're feeding it to our software, which is connected right to the PACS system. We analyze the images and send these images back into your PACS system. So you have another study attached to your original study, which you do not touch, do not change. So when you open the study and you have a hand protocol, it is basically like I always compare it to a blood testing report, right? So you have the X-ray, you have a report with all kinds of measurements, which may or may not help you in your diagnosis of the patient.
Just who is it you're marketing to?
We target, you mentioned, it is on 100 radiologists, working for orthopedic surgeons, doing the reading for them more or less. It's also for orthopedic surgeons themselves, of course. But we sell our software more and more to hospitals, which have these large data sets within their PACS systems, which are usually unstructured data points where there are manually dictated reports attached to that, which makes it difficult to track the patient, look at outcome measures. So basically our software is being used to look at these massive image data sets, to structure it, to extract these readings pre-post-surgical, for example, to correlate that to outcome measures.
Yeah. Just one last question, which is a big interest in the imaging field now, is can this product be scaled to do population health measurements? In other words, you have thousands of patients getting a CAT scan and you can screen them for, let's say, scoliosis or something, or osteoporosis would be another one. And I know you have been involved in osteoporosis research in the past.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. We actually have been partnering with a large pharmaceutical company based here in Europe, which has a very strong partner in the US, where we're looking at CT images, looking at vertebral fractures, or basically any CT containing a fracture, detecting fractures in there, and also grading the fractures according to severity, and in the future already according to recency of the fracture. So this is just one example of how we're looking. But other software tools, if you look at the hip and the long leg, usually many of the hospitals, and we have a couple of very large sites in the US, which actually are looking at outcome measures and seeing how do their procedures really work. And the main issue they have is that the assessment is done in a structured way, which with AI is something where you don't need any resources, and AI can screen an entire PAC system overnight, basically.
Okay, well, great. Thank you for answering those questions for me.
Well, wonderful. Paul, thank you very much for your questions, and Richard for your answers. Let's turn to Audrey Beckman for her to address some interesting questions to you about your technology and the direction of your platform. Audrey, you're on mute.
Yep. Hi, Richard. Thanks for the video and for the dialogue here. Your technology seems really fascinating and maybe covering some gaps that exist in this planning arena. The space of pre-op planning seems fairly crowded, but you're going at it a different way, it seems. I'm interested in how you are developing your data set and how you are structuring it. In other words, are there subgroupings of the data that beyond just the joint or the anatomy that will help you when you think about differences in ethnic groups in terms of musculoskeletal structure, et cetera?
Excellent question. Yes. So we source our imaging data, one part from Europe, which is mostly more Caucasian population, of course, but also the US. So most of the training actually is done still here in Europe because access to data is much easier for us as a European company. But we work with sites such as Washington University in St. Louis and the UT Southwestern folks in Dallas, where basically we run our validation sets and where we also look into multi-center studies, sourcing data from different ethnicities. We have already brought one of our products for the FDA. It's for knee osteoarthritis, where we learned painfully how very detailed the FDA, how much importance the FDA put on the emphasis to have a well-balanced data set. Our second module undergoing FDA review right now is for bone age assessment. So same story there. How do we ensure a well-balanced data sets? And this is really the key forward. And I think this sets us apart from other companies. We work in this MSK space as a team almost 10 years. And I think we have a very good understanding of how the data needs to look in order to, get the trust by the doctor to use the software.
Great, thank you so much. You actually answered another question of mine along the way there. Will your system be able to provide the surgeon with any feedback about the alignment he or she achieved relative to their plan prior to the surgery?
We are currently working with the surgeons down in Dallas to understand how our software can kind of guide them. They're, mostly hip surgeons down there, for example, and they are looking very closely at outcome measures and how our measurements actually support dysplasia assessments, impingements, these kind of things, and how this actually correlates with outcome measures. Is it pain? Is it certain functional scores? So this is work in progress. We don't have the data yet because the software just has been released fairly recently, but this is data we're actually working on.
Okay, great. One last question. So if you're dealing with, facility or hospital clinic-based sales to allow for your local deployment of your software, is it by license or subscription, or what's the actual revenue model?
Usually it's a volume-based subscription model. We usually work with partners like Nuance or Siemens, GE, the big ones, Recon, to name a few, which usually look into the whole imaging, infrastructure in the hospital. So it's usually embedded within their systems, that it's, connected to PowerScribe, the EHR, what you have in the US here. So this is usually a package which a hospital acquires, where it's usually an annual usage fee, which is connected to, certain tiers.
Great. Thanks, Richard.
My pleasure.
Oh, wonderful. Audrey, thank you for your excellent quality questions, and Richard, your explanations. Let's now go to Mike Sherman for a little bit of thoughtful discussion. Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Tony. Richard, I'd like to drill down a little bit on maybe the functionality of the technology. Can this can the AI, I guess it would be the AI, provide the surgeon with a fracture classification or degenerative grade of osteoarthritis? I mean, is there actionable data beyond, you have a fracture?
Yes. Usually detecting a fracture is, from an AI perspective, the simplest thing, the easiest thing to do. You just need the location, basically, and you train the software to learn kind of like, what a fracture looks like. It becomes more tricky if you want to really put a score, which consists of different measurements. This is usually what we enable the software with osteoarthritis, for example, knee osteoarthritis. But again, in the hip, for example, there's a Tönnies grade, for example, as well. There are certain quantitative measurements where you need to detect certain edges, certain landmarks. This is usually a process which takes a lot of images, very solid ground truth. So to ensure that the software is working requires usually radiologists, doing these annotations for us. And then a constant retraining with validation sites across the world, where we get new data, new feedback, and constantly improving the software to a state where we can submit it to an FDA approval.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, it's a content-based data set. Is that something you're working on?
Yes.
Okay. And so you'll, at some point, this technology can grade a fracture. Can it classify a scoliosis curve?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, no, it's a big deal. Do you think that'll be easy, manageable through the FDA? Do you think you'll be able to make the claim that this technology can provide fracture type, curve type, knee and hip scores? Yes.
Our first software gives a binary output, radiographic signs of OA, yes and no, for example. We work on a scoliosis tool, Cobb angles, different additional outputs, which I don't know off the top of my head. The dev team would know it. Again, hip, long leg, very complex measurements. I think in total, it's almost 30 different features which we provide with each of these modules. So yes, it really comes down just to have a reader study to prove that the software performs on par with expert readers. And from this stage on, it comes down what Audrey said, to a well-balanced data set and submit the data for FDA review.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Tony.
Well, thank you very much, Mike and Richard. Thank you as well for addressing Mike's question. Now it is time to ask you, our audience, what do you think? Is this company a game changer? Will they challenge the standard of care? Or do they have a lot more work to do before they get there? Robin Young, publisher of Orthopedics This Week, will present the poll. Robin, over to you.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, let's see how image biopsy polled with our audience. All right, wow, those are interesting results. 46%, the largest percentage, thinks there's something here, but it's hard to see, and I can understand that. By far, the dominant impression appears to be that more work needs to be done. Let me put that in some context. I don't usually do that, but I think in this case, the technology is so new, it's important to put it in again, a particular context. Remember, we're talking about artificial intelligence and using that to read CT scans, then give physicians a more detailed, indeed predictive information than human beings by themselves can do. Remember, humans bring observational bias to looking at things like CT scans. The difference between an AI software and traditional software is that AI self-programs. It teaches itself. So image biopsy's AI programs need to read thousands and thousands of CT scans to learn what to look for, and that takes time. The goal, of course, is to improve the precision and clinical relevance and predictive information that these CT scans can give to physicians. And again, using an AI program to do that. It's important to note, image biopsy is working with two of the largest academic centers in the US to train its programs. So I also think this poll reveals one of the challenges orthopedic surgeons and companies will have as they shift from an implant treatment paradigm to a software treatment paradigm. All right, that's it for this pitch program. And please be sure to watch our other ones. There's some outstanding ones in our collection. And most of all, I'm Robin Young, and thank you all for watching our program. Take care.